Hello, my friends. Welcome to another hands-on. So this is a live session where I'm going to demo how to build things using Penpot. What is Penpot, you ask? Penpot is the open source design tool that bridges the gap between designers and developers. Now, this session is completely live, so hello to everyone who is joining us live. I realized the other day that while my name shows up during these live streams, we don't tend to I don't actually introduce myself. So hi, I'm Laura, and I'm a designer and a developer, and I work with Penpot on education. And if you're joining us live, let me know who you are. Let me know, where you're coming from. What do you do? Like, are you a designer or a developer or neither? um, I'm in Ireland right now, which is confusing because my accent is British because I'm British, but I live in Ireland. So that's a bit about me. And oh, let me know if you're here for the first time or if you're a returning friend. Just want to know a little bit about you. Please ask questions as well. They don't have to be related to who we are and what we do. If you have any questions about Penpot throughout this session, if you just pop them in the comments and whatever platform that you're on, by some magic, also known as very helpful people, we'll be able to bring the questions up live and I will be able to answer them and give you a little demo if I need to as well. I'm also going to share any of the files that I work on live here today at the end of this session in the community post about this session. So you can go to the Penpot community if you want to be able to check out the files and get downloads afterwards. And right at the end of this session, we will have the UI doctor session. So you might remember I was a doctor last time. I was Flex Doctor last time, was I? Yeah. This time I'm UI Doctor. And so the UI Doctor will be in session and I can answer any of your questions if you want to save them up for the end as well. But also feel free to interrupt me and ask if you have anything that is relevant to this session. This session will be on UI and designing with UI kits. So let's get started. I'm going to give you a very quick UI kit demo to kick us off. So here on my screen, as if by magic, there we go. And I have a really rough, tiny little sketch for a card design. Now, please forgive the terrible drawing, but it's just a little rough sketch. Like, that's not the point. So I am going to recreate this using a UI kit. We're in Penpot here. So of course I will start off with a board because that is what we always start with. Now in the Assets tab, I've already imported a library, which is the GNOME Components library. And I'm going to use this components library to recreate this sketch. So this is a card. So I'm going to start off finding a card component to use. Now, here I can actually see I can go through the components and I can browse to cards. And would you look at that? I'm going to go for a light colored one. So now I have a little card component. Isn't that nice? And there's text in it. So I can replace this text. If I go to layers, you can see the card I've imported. This is a component instance. And I can change the text inside the component. And I'm going to just make that into the date. That's the first text at the top of it. And let's see, do we have, I'm going to open the typographies palette. And this button here, I can choose typographies that are kept in the GNOME Components library. And I can pick the right size text. So the date is kind of body text size. So I'm going to go for body, which I think it already was. So next I want to add in my document title. I've got an area that could be text or an image and 3 little icons. So in order to change more of what's inside this card, with a component, you can show and hide elements without making any changes to them. You can change some of their styles as well. You can change the text, but you can't add any new layers inside a component. So in order to add more layers to a pre-built component, I have to detach that component. Detach. I know I can say that word a bit funny, Britishness. So I'm going to detach this instance here. That is also the Shift Command or Shift Control K keyboard shortcut. So now I've detached it. It's no longer a component. It's just back to being standard layers. And I can going to duplicate my text to do my document title. That would be document title. Let's find a nice big heading for that. Oh, that's not big. That's tiny. What about... Oh, there we go. Nice large title there. Next up, I want to add in this second bit, which is, I think I'm going to do more text rather than an image preview, because this is actually going to be a card representing a document. So I'm just going to duplicate the text again. And I'm going to say, this is the preview of my document text. If you know me, you know I hate typing live because I always spell things wrong. And this will be body text as well. Why is that not changing? Come on, there we go. You can see this is kind of overflowing my space, so I need to do a little bit of fiddling around to make this work. So let's make this text box the right size. That's it. Don't exceed the width of the container. And this card layout is using Flexbox, which is why everything's nicely aligned, but it doesn't quite match what's in my card. So I'm going to left align or start align everything. Now you can see I haven't really got enough padding. So I'll add maybe 15 to the top and the bottom, 15 to the left and the right. Just put a little bit of room between these items, and maybe I'll think about further alignment later. Now, the other part I want to put in is these icons here. So let's go and see if I've got anything that will work for that in my component library. Is there an icon button kind of situation going on? Let's have a look. So we have in, excuse me there, we have a menu button. Nope, that's not the right thing. Button icon. Now that feels more like what we need. So I'm going to go for this, is it raised button icon? Oh yeah, that looks good. Quite like that. Now, this has got a view more symbol right now, as they call it, or kebab menu icon. I'm going to switch that out for a different icon. So I'm selecting the icon component inside my button component, and on this side I can swap with another component. And because this library is nicely laid out, I instantly get thrown into the icons collection, so I can choose an appropriate icon. Now, there's not loads of a variety of icons in this particular set, but I'm going to do what I can. So instead of a comment icon, just for the sake of example, I'm going to use the eye icon. And I'm going to create another button. And the next one is going to be my download icon. So something that looks like a download icon. Pan down. That's going to be, I'm going to make that an open folder icon. I'll be more precise in the next demo. This is just a quick demo. And I'm going to replace this one. I do know that there is a delete or trash or bin icon here. There we go. So now I've created my little buttons, and these are all just included in the GNOME Components UI kit. And I want these to align from left to right. I'm going to use some flex layout for that. And so I'm going to say fill the width of the available space, flow these from left to right. No need to wrap, they're never going to take up that much space. Center align them vertically, center align them horizontally. No, I'm going to do space apart. Is that what it's called? I'm making it up now. Space between. Making up my own CSS terminology. And so this is starting to look a little bit more like my card. Now I'm realizing that I made this a bit too big. So let's make that smaller. There we go. And now I can do a little bit more with the layout. I think I probably want some space between going on here, don't I? Maybe I'll have, so how does that look? No. I want to align the text to the top. So I'm going to wrap the text in another flex layout. and I'm going to take off the spacing that was added there. And so now I've got space between the buttons and between the text area, and that's the buttons. So if I change the size of this card, the buttons will stick nicely to the bottom, and that will allow me to have longer and shorter previews of my text. And so this is my, let's name this board, little card demo, just like that. So this is a very, very quick example of how you might use a UI kit in Penpot. Now, before I show you where you can get these UI kits and libraries, does anyone have any questions so far? Okay, great. Well, remember, if you do have any questions you want to ask me, whichever platform you're on, jump into the comments there and ask a question. Unless you're watching this video back later, I am here right now live at approximately 3 in Irish time. So you can ask any questions you want and I will do my best to answer them. And I'll tell you if I don't know the answer. That's the kind of person that I am. So next up, let's jump into UI kits for developers. Now, there are a lot of reasons that you might want to use a UI kit as a developer. For one, you might not have very much confidence in designing things for yourself, and that is fair enough. And to be honest, even as a designer, it will save you a lot of time because there's pre-built components and typographies and colors in there that you can use that give you some guidance on how best to use them. It means you don't have to design everything from scratch for yourself. You can learn from them. If you want to develop your design skills, you can see what makes something more usable just by studying what is already there. And you have these consistent, reusable components, repeatable styles, repeatable colors, repeatable components, repeatable typographies. These are all very closely aligned with development practices of using reusable, componentized kinds of design. And you can get the code from them in Penpot. So for example, I have my card selected. Maybe I want to see what styles it uses, and maybe I don't want to just grab the code directly, but I want to just be able to use the specifics in the design and translate it into code myself. And I can do that if I go to the Inspect tab here. I can see things like, what's the width and the height of the card? What's the fill color? I can see here that the shadow is actually a named shadow color. So this is a reusable variable that I could use throughout my design. I can see the flex layout and the properties of that flex layout. If I select something inside of there, like this text here, it's showing me not just the width and the height, but also which typography it's using. So that named style, what the font style is and the size and the weight. And so if I need to be able to translate all of this into like some sort of CSS or some sort of variables, I'd be able to do that. I can get the CSS properties itself if I wanted to. Let me make this a little bit bigger. So this is just for the selected text. It's showing me, this is the font face, the styles that are relevant to that particular text, and also the HTML. If I select the whole card, oh, there we go. I can see the CSS for all of that card, and I can see HTML for all of that card as well. Now, the HTML, this would be useful if you want to include it all in without the styles, but it also does have class names in there that relate to the CSS, so you can use them together. If, for example, you wanted to just export an icon, so something like this little, let me select the whole icon. You can actually see it. If I wanted to grab the code for that icon, I would probably do it as SVG. And if I wanted to pull that directly into a specific little component file that then I could call in my framework or whatever else I was using, so that I didn't have to just keep adding the image over and over again, Maybe you want to actually use it inside, like render it inside the HTML, and so you could use the same color as the surrounding text and things like that. All of that I could do, but just by grabbing the HTML from here. This is pretty nice, clean SVG going on here, and I can copy it just from these buttons here, or I could just copy all the code very easily like that. And so these are all just generated by Penpot, but it's using intelligently things like the naming that you used in your components, the styles that you saved in a way that translates and makes sense for development. So do I have any questions for related to UI kits for developers or anything so far? Oh, I saw a flash up. There we go. Is it possible to give elements CSS classes? Yes and no. Not specifically from here in the inspect tab. Let me actually select something that's more representative of CSS. So this kind of here. This is just going to generate a bunch of automatic class names, also based on the layer names as well. However, there are plugins available for Penpot that you can use to generate things like Tailwind HTML, which I know is very class name based. You could probably even build your own plugin to do that kind of thing. So there are ways around it if that's your preferred way of doing development. I'm personally like a vanilla person. I like to have my CSS follow semantic naming of my HTML. So in that case, I'd probably massage the HTML and CSS after I exported it from Penpot. But that's like, you can choose what way you want to work with it from there. If you do have feature ideas, by the way, of how Penpot can help you in your development practice and what you would find valuable, I'd really recommend bring it up in the community, because the Penpot team is in there all the time. And if you have suggestions, and a lot of people are saying, oh, this would benefit me as well, the Penpot team do take notice of that kind of stuff. So I would totally recommend you getting in there. Do we have any more questions before I move on? Okay, great. So let's go have a look at the Penpot Hub, because we want to discover UI kits in the Penpot Hub next. Oh, I'm not sure what happened there, but hopefully I'm back. I just saw a loading screen. Okay, so I'm going to show you the Penpot Hub next. So this is the Penpot Hub. You can find it at penpot.app/Penpot Hub. It's kind of hard to tell when you can't see the whole of my browser Chrome, but this is actually a web page. And in the Penpot Hub, you can find plugins. Now, you may have missed my previous hands-on that I did all about Penpot plugins. And if you want to find out more about those, you can just go back a few videos and find that. But today we're going to be looking at UI kits, and these are in libraries and templates. Now, there are a whole load of libraries and templates here, and there's also a very handy little categories buttons, and so we can actually filter these down so we can just see the UI kits to begin with. So you can see there's loads of different UI kits you can choose from and try out with Penpot, and these are all made by the community. So if you made a UI kit yourself, please do share it. There's a how to contribute button at the top here. And if you find a UI kit you want to try out, so say I want to try out this material design one. Now it's telling me, oh, it's got a bunch of UI elements I can use, and I can download the file, which is a Penpot file, and I can import it. Or now, relatively new feature, there's this Use in Penpot button. So if I hit that, it is going to check that I'm a human being. Yes, I'm human. And it is going to import that file automatically into my Penpot. Now, oh, there was a problem importing it, but that is fine. What it will do, this is potentially related to a bug that I have managed to create in my own Penpot account. It will import it automatically into your Penpot files, And so from there, you can move it into the relevant team. And I'm going to show you how I will do that. So I'm going to jump to my UI kits. And here is one I created earlier, just in case my internet gave me issues with downloading the file, because it can do that sometimes. Now I'm just going to make sure it's a library. Okay, so in the normal situation, when you have hit that button, it will put your library in and it will look something like it does here, where I have a thumbnail and it has this little library icon. So this means I have imported a library. Now I'm going to go to a new document that I made earlier with yet another beautiful messy sketch that I did. And I want to be able to use that library with this file. And so I'm going to go to the Assets tab and add a library. And what will load up in the side here is all of the libraries that are in my current team that I'm able to use with this file. Now, when you do add a library, it will be available to everyone in your team. So it will be related to the team that you put it into. So if, like me, you're a member of a whole bunch of teams, you can actually keep your libraries separated out by team. So in here, I am going to add a library, and I'm going to add this Material Design 3 library. Now, in order to connect it to my file, I just press this little plus button. There we go. And it has connected to the file. 382 components. That is a lot of components. 30 colors, 16 typographies. And so now that I've added that library or UI kit, it's now visible in the Assets tab. So I've got, these are all of the components, colors, and typographies in my local library. And these are all of the components and colors and typographies in the Material Design 3 library. So I'm going to recreate this wonderful sketch as a full UI design. And so I'm going to start off by, oh, not that button. I'm going to give it a default board size that looks vaguely like the web. So 1280 pixels. Name my board, because if you've been here before, you know I love to keep everything really well organized. Now, how about we start off by giving this board a fill color that fits in with the Material Design look and feel. Just handy that background is the first color in there. It is actually a different color. It's just very subtly different. So there we go. Got that. Right. What should I go for next? What I like to do when I'm doing web layouts is I like to add an initial flex layout to the board, so it just behaves quite like the web. So I've just done that. It just means any elements I chuck onto this board will be arranged vertically. It just makes it a bit easier to work with. Right, I'm going to add, let's start with this navigation down here, this sidebar thing. So let's go to components. Now, with a library that has this many components, search is really useful because you don't want to have to trawl through them all. So I'm going to go search for navigation. So with navigation, see I have this bar options. I have, here we go, a drawer. That looks good. Standard or modal? Standard sounds about right. And I'm going to drag that onto my board. So now I can go about making this look a little bit more like the navigation that I've got here. So let's go to layers. You can see here, this is the component. Now I don't want the headline, so I'm going to hide that. Oh, and the container for, not the container for the whole thing. Let's hide that. Background fine, menu. Now I don't know what this first menu item is, but I don't need that. And I'm going to start renaming my text. So this is documents. Then I have version history and trash. And at the bottom, I've got 3 elements here, but there's only 2 here. So I'm going to, if I want to add another one of these, now you remember I said before, if you want to make any significant structural changes to a component, you'll need to detach that component so you can make those changes. So I'm going to detach that. And now I can duplicate that menu item. And this one is going to be called account. Now, a few more little changes, because the thing is that A lot of UI kits, you'll just use the elements as is, but a lot of the time you will want to make changes to customize it for yourself. And I'll talk more about saving those changes for yourself later on. But say, for example, I want to make it so that these 3 links at the bottom stick to the bottom of my layout, and there's the empty space is distributed in the vertical middle here. So in order to do that, I'm going to group these top items with another flex layout, and I'm going to call this top. I don't know why that's brought back that semicircle. Let's find out what you are and hide you. Oh, active indicator, that's what you are. Okay. And let's get the bottom items, and I'm going to call that bottom. And then I can apply to my menu, my flex layout, and this will be familiar to you from earlier. I'm going to justify the content space between. It's not doing space between. Why is that, you ask? It is because the height of the container is set to fit the content, so there is no space. So I'm going to set it to fit the height of its container itself. And there we go. That looks a bit better. I think my divider there isn't full width, so we can do something about that. Make that full width and make that full width. We got some mystery padding in there. Why are you not the width you should be? Because there's mystery padding in there. There we go. Now that's full width. Perfect. I knew it was mystery padding all along. Okay, so next up, what are we going to do? Oh, we want to add the logo, a little bit of text at the top. So I'm going to chuck some text in. That's become tiny in the corner. So to edit it, right. Gosh, when you're writing a text and it's white, it is hard to see if you're typing it right, which I was not. I'm going to give it some, so it's on the background, so I guess I'm going to give it the on background text color. Have you gone? There we go. And let's type that properly this time. Write safe. That's the name of my little app that I'm making. Oh, did I mention this is a document dashboard? I think I didn't. Maybe it was obvious, maybe it wasn't. So this is supposed to be one of these dashboards that you get, and it has a list of documents like the card we had before in there. Now I'm going to choose a typography. When you open up the palette and it says there are no typography styles in your library yet, that just means for the current selected library, because I haven't added any to my local library. But if I use this little button here, I can choose the typographies from the material design. Now, what size do I want this to be? See, headline small, it's quite big. Title small, title medium. Title medium. Hard to tell if that's the right size or not. Whoops, what'd you do? Chaos going on. There we go. All right, got it back. Let's set that to title medium again and hope that wasn't the magic bug I had enabled. Okay, there we go, title medium. Now, I want to add a bit more space around this header. In fact, I'll make a whole header container there, and I'm going to make that stretch the full width of the available space, and let's give it some padding around it so that it aligns nicely with the rest of the items. Not sure if that's sufficient padding, is it? Am I aligning it to? That's the question. Maybe it's about 15 pixels then. That looks a little better. So we'll go 15 in between. And I want to add a dividing line. I know that I've got a box around this layout, but there is a line I want to have in there. So I'm going to find a dividing line. So let's search for divider. And there we go. A little hard to see, but full width divider. That sounds good to me. Now I have put this in a flex layout, so I'm going to change the layout because I want the line to be below the text, so it flows from top to bottom. And, oh, actually, I don't really want the padding on the sides, do I? Because I want the line to be able to stretch full width. So I don't want it on the bottom either. So let's make that full width using this little arrows here. And I want to keep the height the same regardless of the design. So I'm going to fix that height. And then I'm going to apply the padding to the text instead. So 15, that's too much on the bottom. There we go. That's a little bit off because of the padding around this. So I'm going to add a bit more to the top just to even it out optically. There we go. That looks a bit better. So what are we going to do next? Just looking at my list of notes. The meta section. So this section is what I would call the meta section, where we have a title, we have a search bar, we have an upload button and a new document button. So I'm going to chuck in a bit of text, sentence case that, and this is going to be my large title, headline large. Yeah, that's nice and big. It's a big text for the most important text on the page. And I'm going to put this inside. I'm thinking about how my layout is working here. So I've got this overall layout that's vertical. Then I have a sidebar here and a main area here. But these are aligned to each other. And so I want to have a container that contains both my sidebar and my main. So I'm going to group that together. And this is going to be my main. I keep changing the meaning of the word main. I apologize for that. So that is going to flow from left to right and be full width and be full height. And I've got my navigation inside of there. And that board doesn't actually have layout, so I'm going to add some layout to that. And that is going to flow top to bottom and be full height. There we go, it's back. And then I'm going to have my text is going to be in my, let's call it the content container. And I will add a flex layout to that, flowing top to bottom as well. And that will be full width and full height. So you can see that that content takes up all that space alongside the navigation. Who thought you don't need to use grid to do a layout like that? Now I'm going to add in those other elements. So we've got some vertical layout going on here and some horizontal layout going on here. So I love to name things top and bottom. I don't think that's the most semantic of namings, but it makes sense to me in the moment right now. And let's find some buttons. So in components, what button options do I have? Segmented, nope. Icon buttons. Oh, that looks good for later. So I might use that a bit later. Tonal buttons, common buttons. Oh, there we go. This is looking more like what we want. So if we look here, there's two buttons side by side. So we probably want them to have slightly different styles so that people don't hit the wrong one by accident. So I'm going to use a common filled button and a common outlined button. Oh, maybe I want one with an icon. Is this one with an icon? We'll see. We'll see. Right. And I'm going to align these buttons to each other using a flex layout. And I'm going to go left to right with that. Call that buttons. And why is this overlapping each other? Because I've not put it inside the top container. There we go. And set that apart. Now I have a feeling that what is going on here is something to do with inside these components. So let's have a look. Sometimes, I should hide that for now so it's not overlapping. I said hide that for now so it's not overlapping. Can't listen to me. That was me pressing the keyboard. So this is going to be my add document button. But you see here, I can't see the text. There is text there, but I can't see it. Sometimes when you use a UI kit or something you haven't built yourself, people will arrange their elements in a way that you personally wouldn't do it. And this is one of such examples. So for example, I think a background layer is completely redundant in Penpot if you have a flex layout, because you can apply the background to that flex layout. So I'm going to take, and you can see there's some kind of funky positioning going on here to make sure that the background appears underneath the label, but it's having the effect that it is obscuring the label instead. So I'm going to take the style of this element here, so that it's got a 20 rounded corner radius, and it's got a primary fill. And I'm going to copy these styles. I'm not going to do the copy properties, which is like the best shortcut ever, because I don't want to copy all of this positioning stuff. So, but I'm going to take the 20 border radius, and I'm going to add the fill. Let's find that fill color. What was it called? Primary. There we go. And I've just used those on the container, so I can delete this layer. There we go, we can see the text. So that's just a tip if you're seeing things like this being used. Bear in mind, I say delete, I'm just hiding this layer because I'm editing the component right now, and I can do that. So what was this icon called again? Button. Oh, I mixed them wrong way around. Upload and new document. I think new document would be the most important action rather than uploading a document. So I'm using the primary button for that and the secondary or outlined button for the other. Now, what is going on with my alignment? These are not quite right. So fixed width and height. So we want to make these fit the container. Make that fit the container. And that way it will change its size to fit the text. Let's put a bit of spacing between these buttons. So there we go. Now, we've got that. Let's put our document text back. Now top, it's because it's not as wide as it could be. There we go. And I'm going to add some spacing in there too. I'm just chucking random values in right now, but we're getting it in. And let's add a bit of padding to the outsides of my main. Gee, this is fine. I'm going to add it to the content area itself. There we go. A little bit more space going on. Let's look for a search element. There we go. Got myself a search bar. I don't want something with menu in it. These are quite small for you to see. That looks about right. So I chuck that in there. Now, because it's already in the flex layout here, that's working quite well. I'm just going to add in the placeholder there, search documents. May not be best practice to do that, but this is just an example. Do as I say, not as I do. And I'm going to chuck another title in, recent documents, which is going to serve as the title for the next section. And let's make that. We don't want to make it as big as this text here. So is it a small headline? Yeah, that looks about right. And we'll just change the order and give it some padding on the top to push it away from the elements above it. 60. Yeah, that's a bit of hierarchy going on there. Okay. And next I'm going to start working on these cards. But first, before we get to cards, because I want to handle some icons in there, you might have noticed that the icons that I'm using here, oh, what happened here? I've lost two of my menu items. Where did they go? The bottom section. Where did you? All right, that one's. Where's that invisible menu items? Huh. This is watching Laura be confused by something is a great viewing experience. Okay, we'll come back to that later because I've no idea what I managed to do there. If you know, let me know in the comments. If you've realised what I've pressed by accident, do tell me. So one example here, I've got, obviously you don't want a heart icon for your version history. And so I want to switch out these icons. Now what you can do is you can use multiple different libraries together, because maybe I'm going to go into the material design library and look at the icons, which are called graphics in this, aren't they? Lib icons. So if I wanted to look at the field icons, there's not loads in here. So luckily, I do have a library that I made earlier, and I can add that library to the file as well. So I'm going to add in, loading, the material design light icons. And this is from an icon set that I found online, free and open, of course, and with the license that I can use. And so now I can come in and I can find an icon that I want to replace this version history icon. So I'm going to replace this. So I want to find, oh, not that button, search history. And there we go. That's a nice version history icon. Absolutely massive. So let's make that a bit smaller. There we go. Oh, just like that, she actually realized the right size. And then I can pop that in place of that icon. I've put it in the wrong one. So how do I manage that? Okay. How did I manage to put it inside of a... Okay, make that 24. There we go, inside version history. Hide the other one. That's better. Okay, and I'm going to... I actually ended up using one from Material Design 3 there, didn't I? Oh well. And change the color of it. Let's move from the material design into, now I think this would be on, make sure I've got the right bit selected. Got to be careful with icons that you have the right layer selected when you change the color. So you don't want to accidentally change the color of the background folder. Secondary. Yeah, that looks better. So you can change your icons like this. Now, just to be sure that I was using something from this other library here, I'm just going to find, do I have something for archive? Folders. Naming things, truly difficult. And so, yes, this is from the material design light icons. I'm going to grab this folders icon and chuck that in there. That's better. That's why it's the right size now. There we go. So you can use multiple libraries together in that way. Now, does anyone have any questions? Please let the questions not be, why is Laura breaking things? Hello, do you think you can motivate people to port popular UI frameworks like ShadCN into UI kits? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, anyone here want to do it? To be honest, this is one of the UI kits I have looked at personally porting into Penpot, and I can say that it's not a huge amount of work, because if these libraries already have some sort of graphical UI kit that's in a design tool, and therefore it's exportable as SVG, once you have SVGs, it's quite easy to start porting those things into Penpot. And things like colors and stuff like that are very easy to pull in. And so if you have a bit of time, you can make that for yourself. If there is a particular UI kit a lot of people are asking for, maybe I'll look into whether it's worth doing. Like, that could actually be quite a cool like demo, couldn't it? Like me showing you how I might port a UI kit or elements of a UI kit across into Penpot. But I definitely think that the more people in the community start using Penpot and want to port these things across, it will be available for everyone to use. But to be fair, there are already a fair amount of UI kits in the Penpot Hub. So if I just go back to the hub quickly, which says forgetting the keyboard shortcut for the other tab. Oh, I closed the tab. Okay. Penpot Hub. How fast can the person find a hub? There we go. So there are a bunch of UI kits in here already, like Material Design 3. There's this neomorphic UI kit. There's UI kits for very specific use cases like dashboards. There's the GNOME components one. There's a bunch of styles that work with Tailwind. There's Material Design, Base Lineal. So there are a load in there already. But yeah, I think it's not a huge challenge to do it yourself. If you are someone who does want to port a UI kit over, please share it on the community. You will have everyone's love and respect forever. And I personally would appreciate it too. If you want to do that and you need some help or want to discuss how you might go about it, jump in the community and send me an app message or a direct message. Like, I'd be really happy to help you out with that. Do we have any other questions for now before I move on to the next bit? Okay, is it possible to make forks of UI kits and apply your own changes to later to be able to sync to the source of the fork? Anna, that is an interesting question. Okay, I will tell you as part of the next demo, because this is exactly the kind of thing that I'm going to be moving on to, which is I'm going to be talking about UI kits and design systems. So for example, you have used a library like this, but you have been making changes to these components. You've been detaching components in order to be able to make them more like you want them to be. In those cases, you might want to start saving those components you're creating so that you can reuse those again. And that's pretty straightforward to do that. So in this case, I can just create a component from what I've already got here. So this is the navigation component I had before. I think, what was it called before? It was called, actually, the whole thing. Grab the whole component. So it's navigation drawer, standard navigation drawer. If I create a component from that, it's going to create a component in my local file library, and it is going to name it navigation drawer, standard navigation drawer. So this is the folder name or group name, and this is the component name. And so you can very easily start saving those yourself. In terms of working collectively on a UI kit and being able to fork and merge your changes back in, this is not a process that is currently possible, say, using Git or something in Penpot, although I do know that the team is very keen on looking into ways to integrate changes and forks and merges and things like that with Git, because obviously open source is very important to Penpot, and so being able to have means of contributing is incredibly important. But what you could do is, when you have this local library, and if you are part of a team, so say that you've created a team where you have the contributors to the UI kit, and you have your main file in there. So main, like the branch in Git. And so you have that main file shared amongst your team of core contributors. Then what you can do is you can create duplicates of that library, and you can create your other components like this, and then you can copy those components back in to the main file. So it's important for me to show you how libraries work in that way. So I've started adding components into my local library. Another example of what I might do here is I might decide I don't actually like the Roboto font, because I mean, this really looks like Google Material Design, and not everyone wants to create a website that looks like a duplicate of Google. So I want to create my own version of this headline. I'm going to detach or break the connection between the typography and this text. I'm pressing this little icon. And I'm just going to change the font. I'm going to change it to a nice geometric font called Manrope, and let's make it a little bit bolder. And I'm going to save this typography as well. And I'm going to call it, oh, I wish I'd kept the name of that in my head. Was it headline large? Something like that. And check to save that. So I now have saved this typography in here too. Maybe I'll do that with color as well. So I've got this kind of, this in this component here, there's this surface tint color. But maybe I'm not a massive fan of purple. So I'm going to break the connection of this surface tint, and I'm going to change it to, I don't know, tweak the hue to make it blue, make it a little bit more vibrant. And then I'm going to save that to my file library. I need to have that selected for this little plus button to appear. And this has saved the color. And I can then find it here, ready to name, and I'm going to call that surface tint. So now I have a component, color, and a typography, and I want to share this library with anyone else. So I go to Manage Library, and I can publish this library. Now, if you remember at the beginning, when I showed you in my dashboard here, there's a library icon that appears when it's a library. And so now I have the library of my document dashboard appearing here. And say I go into another file in the same team and I manage libraries, I can actually connect document dashboard, there it is, to my file and use the components like that navigation. Not the prettiest looking component in the world, but it is a component and it works into that file. So you could probably work out a system using libraries in that way. You would have to do, you can't do manual merging, you can't do auto merging or auto forking. These are all manual and they'd have to be quite disciplined processes in order to make sure you don't break anything. But I do think that would be a really cool feature, because I think being able to work together on these designs is really important. Now, do we have any more questions? I think this might be a good time to move on to the UI doctor. She says, putting on her doctor's coat and stethoscope. So let me make this a bit bigger so I can see my text a bit bigger. What plans, if any, to develop MCP so we can plug Storybook or GitHub repository containing our design system and use AI and Penpot and our data? I'm not entirely sure what you mean by MCP. If you can elaborate on that particular acronym. But yes, there is already a Penpot API. So you can already build your own system. You could make it as a plugin, or otherwise you could build it as your own addition into Penpot if you are using a self-hosted version of it. So you could very easily integrate your own systems into Penpot. There are already plugins that are working with other design system and framework related like items so that you can integrate stuff a lot easier. I think there's even an AI plugin or two going on there. But yeah, so there are ways that you can integrate Penpot with your code already. As I've developed a plugin myself and I found it really straightforward. So if that's anything to go by, I think using the API and stuff like that should be really easy. Like Penpot really considers the developer experience there. And yeah, so you can build what you want. But also it would be really cool if there are any generous community-minded developers out there who want to build these things themselves. And I can also tell you that the Penpot team are very enthusiastic about the developer experience. And so we've got things like design tokens coming up, which is very much an interoperable format that you can use very easily with other frameworks and in your own work, Storybook, things like that. So there's a lot going on there. Do we have any other questions for the UI doctor? Could you share more about the accessible design plugin? Oh, bless you. So the accessible design plugin is this accessible design checklist that I made. And I made this for Penpot back in December. And so it is just a very simple little checklist plugin. And the idea is that it gives you a kind of easy way of understanding some of the guidelines for web content accessibility that's related to your design in Penpot. So you can go through it and work out, oh, learn a little bit more about what might make it accessible. So for example, here I have a content section that says, if you're using dummy content, set a good example by making your content accessible. So you can use headings to introduce and section your content. You can make sure that you have text alternatives for your images, using plain language. What's relevant to this little card design maybe? The layout is simple and straightforward. Well, I'll check that off the list. Is it consistent across different views and pages? I can check that off the list. Maybe if I go down to my contrast, have I checked the color contrast? And for that, I actually recommend, there's another Penpot plugin that was made by the Penpot team, and it is called Contrast. And you can actually use the contrast plugin. So if I wanted to check the contrast of this text against this background, like black and white, I can see whether it is AAA or AA, which is against the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, what they dictate as being like really, really nice high contrast or sufficiently high contrast. If I chose two colors like green and red, classics, on the left is red, on the right is green, and I choose those, these are not accessible. And so it's flagged them. You see the contrast ratio is too low. So yeah, sorry, very easy for me to just fall down a rabbit hole of accessibility. Do we have any maybe a final question before we wrap up, or not? If you have any more questions that you want to ask me that are related to this session, probably the best place to do it, you can either do it still in the comments for this video and I will look to pick them up later, or in the community post related to this hands-on. I will share those demo files that I've done here, including my icon library. I'll share that in the community post too. The next hands-on, that is on Wednesday, the 30th of April, and we will be doing a preview and an introduction to design tokens. I'm really excited about this one. We're going to be able to do some really cool stuff that I've wanted to do with Penpot for ages. So I'm really looking forward to that. You can get the latest updates about Penpot wherever you're watching this video. And make sure you subscribe if you want to be the first to find out about the next hands-on. And yes, thank you very much for joining me. Thank you everyone who's joined me here live. I really appreciate it. I will be reading your comments and questions back later and seeing where you're all from. I'm looking forward to diving into that. Thank you so much, and I will see you next time. Goodbye.